buildings that cost approximately $139 million to build, that went through a bankruptcy and were located in West Palm Beach, Florida. They were beautiful buildings, but the real estate depression was in full swing and nothing was selling. The bank that ultimately ended up taking them back, the Bank of New York, really wanted to make a deal. So I bought them with Lee Iacocca. The problem of buying property in a virtual real estate depression is that you have no idea how long the depression will last. If it lasts too long, you made a bad bet. In this case, it lasted for years longer than people anticipated. Even if you buy the property cheaply, which I did, in the end, it's not such a great investment because it takes so long for the market to come back. And when you add in the cost of carrying the building and all the costs associated with putting up money early, you're better off just relaxing. In any event, Lee wanted to go into the deal, and we did it as a 50-50 joint venture. From the day I made the deal with Lee, he would call me on a daily basis and call the people at the building over and over again. I told him, "Lee, take it easy. It's going to take time. We're in the middle of a virtual real estate depression, and it's not going to go fast. Just take it easy, because time is something we can't do anything about." I had a salesperson working at the job who was very good, but also very rough. She had very little regard for Lee, and would talk to him in a really tough manner, saying things like, "Why don't you leave us the hell alone? Why do you call so much? What's your problem?" Or, "Take your face and shove it up your ass." It used to drive him crazy. In the end, he would call me constantly to see whether he could get out of the deal. It got to a point where he called, and it sounded to me like he was crying. I could actually hear him crying in order to get his money back. This happened on 2 occasions. I am sure Lee has quite a bit of wealth, so I didn't understand, for the relatively small amount he invested, the banks put up most of the money, why he took it so seriously. One of the more shocking things to happen to me was to hear this man crying, who I thought would never shed a tear in his entire life. I ended up giving him back his money and dissolving the partnership. It was easier than putting up with all of his bullshit. Dealing with Lee Iacocca was not fun. The apartments ultimately sold, and today Trump Plaza is 100% sold and is one of the highest-priced buildings in the Palm Beach area. Watch your back and listen. A few years ago, a high-end retail store rented space for me in one of my buildings. They needed to redesign the space before they opened the store. I know every contractor in New York, and only about 25% are any good. I know every one of them, because I have been screwed by every one of them. I said to my new tenant, "Don't use a contractor unless I approve it." I really didn't care which contractor they used because they were paying me a huge rent. Since I was not getting a percentage, it didn't matter to me what it ended up costing them. But I like to help people, so I called them, and I said, "When you hire your contractor, I recommend the following 3 people. They said, "Oh, thank you very much." I called them 2 months later, and I said, "Who did you use?" They said, "We used so-and-so." I said, "What? He's a total scoundrel. You can't use him. He's going to rip you off." They had a construction budget of $17 million. In New York, $17 million is nothing. This was going to be a big high-end store, and they wanted to use a contractor who was going to rip them off. I'm really smart, and I really know construction. I know this city. There are some terrible people in this city. Now, this contractor that they had hired was fired from almost every job that he did, and I believe he'd even gone to jail for some terrible things he did. I said to this tenant, "I'm going to do you a tremendous favor. You can't use that guy." They said, "Why?" "He'll kill you. Number 1, I think he went to jail for stealing. And number 2, the job will take twice as long, and it will cost you much more than $17 million. They said to me, "We're going to use him because we think he's wonderful. We really like him. And by the way, Mr. Trump, we've rented your space. We have a 20-year lease. We'll do what we want." I said, "What? You're talking to me that way? You people are stupid." Then I figured they were on their own, and I wouldn't try to help them anymore. That was the first indication I got that their heads weren't on straight. Then these schmucks came to me with another big problem. The doorway, designed by this big-name architect they had hired, was supposed to go right where a column is. I said, "Why don't you change the design and place the door on a wall that hasn't even been built yet? Wouldn't that be a little cheaper?" Moving the column would cost them approximately $2 million. The building would have to be jacked up and then held up while the column was moved. It's a big deal. In the end, the $17 million renovation they had budgeted ended up costing them $48 million. By that time, I was sure those clueless novices would go out of business, and that's basically what happened. Finally, they came to me and said, "Mr. Trump, we failed. We want to get out of the lease." I said, "I want you to pay me $100 million to get out of your lease." They said, "We don't have that much." "I'll take less. What do you have?" They named a figure. Believe me, it wasn't that much after this contractor was finished with them. I said, "I'll take all of it." Anyway, it turned out to be a very happy ending. They paid me the money and got out of their lease. That whole experience just shows that you have to be smart and listen. There are many bad people out there who want to take you for every penny you have. If you're stupid and gullible, it's only a matter of time before someone takes your money. So watch your step and pay attention. Get people to respect you. You have to make sure that people you deal with know that you know what's happening, because otherwise they're really going to take advantage of you, and you don't want that to happen. Make them respect you for your knowledge. I'm good at real estate. I understand real estate, and I love real estate. Nobody can pull the wool over my eyes when it comes to real estate. That's the most important lesson in getting respect. Know your stuff. Almost from the time I could walk, I had been going to construction sites with my father. I watched him work, and I learned how he controlled the men who worked for him. As a teenager, when I came home from military school for vacation, I followed my father around to learn about the business up close, dealing with contractors, inspecting properties, and making deals. I learned that to make a profit in this business, you have to be able to keep costs down. I learned from my father how to negotiate. My father would negotiate just as hard for mops and brooms as he would in the construction of a building. He knew his stuff. If he knew a roofing job was going to cost the contractor $800,000, then he did not try to beat him down to $600,000. He did not let the roofer push him into paying $1.2 million either. You also must let everyone you meet know that you know your stuff. If you're a business person, look like a business person, dress the part, and act the part. Do not cause any doubt in anybody's mind that you don't know your stuff. When I moved to Manhattan to do my first deal, I did not have money or employees. When I went into an office, I acted as if I had an organization, the Trump Organization, behind me. I was on my own and no longer working for my father. Few people knew that the Trump Organization had no employees except myself and operated out of my studio apartment in Manhattan. I dressed the part of a successful real estate entrepreneur. I would march into the seller's office, impeccably dressed in my black pinstripe suit, white shirt, and monogram tie, armed with the determination and enthusiasm of someone who was going to make things happen. Nobody ever questioned whether I could do it. I acted as if I could do anything, and nobody had the nerve to question that assumption. From the very start, I was in complete control of every deal because I commanded everyone's respect. I was speaking at one of the Learning Annex expos, And I was telling the crowd of 62,000 people that I think Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice is a lovely woman. But I'd rather have a bitch negotiating with China and Iran. I'd rather have somebody really tough who's a great negotiator. I used the word bitch to describe the type of tough negotiator we need representing the interests of our country. You won't believe what happened. The headline in the paper the next day read, "Trump calls Condi Rice a bitch." That is not what I said. It just shows that nobody is more dishonest than the press. There are some fine journalists out there, but there are also many scoundrels. Here's the typical scenario you see over and over again with Condi Rice. She goes to some country to meet a dictator or whatever, who is a ruthless killer, a vicious murderer, who is a lot smarter than she is. She walks off an airplane and waves hello with a big smile, and then she does a short soundbite. She goes over to the dictator's office and sits down for a photo op with him. The chairs are set at 45-degree angles so the photographers can get nice pictures of her with the dictator. Then she leaves, waves goodbye, gets back on the airplane, and nothing happens. Nothing ever happens. Now, I could give you the names of 10 to 20 of the greatest deal makers in the world who live in this country. These mean, great negotiators could go up against China or Iran and work out a fabulous deal for the United States. Instead, we have well-meaning but naive academic people negotiating who don't know what they're doing in tough real-life situations. They've never faced tough winner-take-all, fight-to-the-death negotiations against ruthless and vicious adversaries. If the government used our best negotiators, it would solve a lot of our problems, and the United States would come out on top. For one thing, we have all the cards. We have the strongest military and the strongest economy on Earth, or at least we had. Who the hell can beat us? We would be negotiating from strength. We would